In the heart of New York City, a bustling metropolis filled with glitz and glamour, a man named Marcus Reed stepped into an upscale restaurant known as Le Chateau. Unlike the usual clientele who arrived in designer suits and elegant evening gowns, Marcus was dressed casually, a simple hoodie, worn-out jeans, and sneakers that had clearly seen better days. His towering frame and quiet demeanor made him stand out, but not in a way that anyone admired. As Marcus settled into a small corner table, the golden chandeliers above cast a warm glow over the restaurant, highlighting its opulence. However, before he could even place an order, a waitress named Olivia approached, her eyes filled with barely concealed disdain. She looked him up and down, her lips curling into a smirk. "Are you sure you can afford to dine here?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. The words weren't whispered. They were spoken loudly enough for nearby patrons to hear. A few diners exchanged amused glances. Some chuckled under their breath. Marcus, unfazed by the insult, simply smiled and met her gaze. He had encountered prejudice before, but tonight, this restaurant would learn an unforgettable lesson. Olivia stood at the reception desk of Le Chateau, a restaurant synonymous with class and sophistication. She prided herself on working at one of the most exclusive dining establishments in the city. To her, guests had to meet a certain standard: elegance, wealth, and refinement. Anything less was unacceptable. As she continued to look Marcus up and down, her smirk deepened. His casual attire, his faded hoodie, worn jeans, and sneakers, didn't belong in a place where dinner could cost more than a week's rent. With a sigh, she grabbed a menu and tilted her head. "If you really insist on eating here, I suppose I can find you a table," she said with exaggerated politeness. "Follow me." She didn't lead him to the prime seating in the center of the dining hall, where chandeliers sparkled above crisp white tablecloths. Instead, she walked past every elegant setting, guiding him to the farthest, least desirable table, right next to the kitchen. The clatter of dishes and the faint smell of cleaning products lingered in the air. "This spot should suit you just fine," she said with a fake smile, dropping the menu onto the table with a sharp thud. A few nearby diners watched, some shaking their heads at her blatant disrespect, but no one spoke up. Marcus, however, showed no reaction. His calm smile remained as he pulled out his chair and sat down, unfazed. He scanned the menu with genuine interest, as if her insults were no more than background noise. Irritated by his composure, Olivia wasn't done. She approached again, her voice just loud enough for others to hear. "Would you like me to explain the prices?" she asked, her finger tapping the most expensive dish on the menu. "Our Chateaubriand is $400. I just want to make sure there are no surprises." A hush fell over the nearby tables. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances, while others watched with curiosity. A young woman dining with her friend whispered, "She's being so rude. Why is she treating him like that?" Marcus finally looked up, his eyes steady and unreadable. Then, with the same calm confidence, he said, "I'll have the Chateaubriand, medium rare, and a bottle of your finest wine." Olivia blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She hadn't expected him to order the most expensive item so casually. Regaining her composure, she let out a small, derisive laugh. "Oh, really?" she sneered. "I hope you know how to appreciate it. This isn't just any steak." A man at a nearby table shook his head. "She thinks he can't afford it," he murmured to his wife. "She has no idea who she's dealing with." Oblivious to the growing attention around her, Olivia smirked and walked away, confident that Marcus would either leave humiliated or be unable to pay when the bill arrived. What she didn't know was that this night was about to take a dramatic turn, one that would change everything. As Olivia walked away, a smug grin lingered on her lips. She was certain that Marcus had no idea what he had just ordered. To her, he was just another outsider trying to impress people he couldn't afford to mingle with. From the other side of the restaurant, an older gentleman, Mr. Calloway, watched the scene unfold with keen interest. Dressed in a finely tailored suit, he leaned toward his wife, whispering, "That man. He's too composed. He's not reacting the way she expects him to." Meanwhile, Marcus remained relaxed, his hands resting lightly on the table as he admired the restaurant's ambiance. Though he had said little, his presence commanded attention. Nearby diners whispered among themselves, some out of curiosity, others out of growing disapproval for Olivia's behavior. At the bar, Olivia leaned against the counter, shaking her head as she spoke to a fellow server named Daniel. "I give him 5 minutes before he bolts," she muttered. "People like that always try to act like they belong, but wait until he sees the bill." Daniel frowned slightly, glancing toward Marcus. Unlike Olivia, he wasn't so quick to judge. "Maybe he just wants a nice meal," he suggested. "You never know people's stories." Olivia scoffed. "Please, look at him. Worn-out sneakers in Le Chateau? That's not class. It's desperation." Back at his table, Marcus continued to sit in peace, unaffected by the judgment surrounding him. A jazz trio played softly in the background, and when they finished their song, Marcus clapped, a slow, appreciative applause that made the musicians smile. Some nearby diners joined in, while Olivia, still standing at the bar, narrowed her eyes in frustration. Why isn't he uncomfortable? Why isn't he leaving? Determined to rattle him, Olivia decided to take her pettiness a step further. She purposefully delayed his order, attending to every other table while blatantly ignoring Marcus. He waited patiently, watching as guests who arrived long after him were served first. At a nearby table, Lisa, a young entrepreneur who had been observing the situation, leaned toward her friend. "She's deliberately skipping him," she muttered, her tone filled with irritation. Her friend nodded. "She's trying to make him leave, but he's not giving her the reaction she wants." The tension in the restaurant grew heavier with each passing minute. Mr. Calloway tapped his fingers against his wine glass, his patience wearing thin. "This is disgraceful," he finally murmured to his wife. Across the room, Olivia strolled past Marcus's table once more, speaking just loudly enough for him to hear. "Some people don't understand that not everyone belongs here," she remarked to another server, smirking. But still, Marcus didn't react. Instead, he simply looked up at her, his expression unreadable. Unbeknownst to Olivia, her biggest humiliation was just moments away. The atmosphere inside Le Chateau had shifted. What was once a lively and elegant dining experience had now become an unspoken performance, one in which Olivia was unknowingly setting herself up for failure. Still seated at his table in the dimly lit corner, Marcus remained unbothered. His relaxed demeanor contrasted sharply with the tension in the room. More and more diners had taken notice of Olivia's dismissive treatment, and whispers of disapproval rippled through the air. At the reception desk, the restaurant manager, Mr. Thompson, finally emerged. A distinguished man in his 50s, he had been handling a business call in his office, unaware of the brewing storm outside. But the moment he stepped into the dining hall, he could feel the shift in energy. Something was off. His sharp eyes scanned the room, landing on Olivia, who was now openly ignoring one particular table. Then he saw who was sitting there. Immediately, his posture stiffened, and his expression darkened with realization. Without hesitation, he strode toward Marcus's table, his polished shoes clicking against the wooden floor, demanding attention. The murmurs in the room quieted. Olivia, who had just walked past Marcus yet again without acknowledging him, suddenly felt the presence of someone behind her. "Mr. Reed," Mr. Thompson spoke, his voice filled with deep respect. "I had no idea you were dining with us tonight." A collective hush fell over the restaurant. Eyes widened. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations stopped entirely. Marcus looked up from his menu and smiled. "No worries, Thompson. I just wanted to enjoy a quiet evening." At the mention of his name, a few guests gasped in recognition. Olivia, however, remained frozen, confusion clouding her face. Mr. Thompson's expression grew even more serious as he turned slightly, his gaze landing on Olivia. "Miss Olivia," he said, his voice stern but measured. "Do you have any idea who you've been speaking to?" Olivia's heart pounded in her chest. She swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. That's Marcus Reed," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice carrying through the silent restaurant. "One of the primary investors in Le Chateau. In other words, he owns this place." The words struck Olivia like a lightning bolt. Her blood ran cold as the weight of her actions crashed down on her. The smug confidence she had carried all night evaporated instantly, replaced by sheer panic. The diners erupted into hushed conversations. A couple seated near the entrance exchanged stunned glances. "Wait, he's Marcus Reed? The real estate mogul?" Another guest whispered. "And she treated him like that?" Olivia's breath hitched. She had spent the entire evening belittling, ignoring, and mocking a man who not only belonged there, but owned the very restaurant she worked for. Her hands trembled as she looked at Marcus, who remained as composed as ever, watching her with a calm but knowing expression. For the first time that night, Olivia realized she was the one who didn't belong here. Olivia's stomach twisted into knots. The weight of Mr. Thompson's words pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. The room, once filled with quiet amusement at Marcus's supposed misfortune, was now alive with shock and murmurs of disbelief. She could feel the stares, some disapproving, others filled with second-hand embarrassment. Just moments ago, she had strutted through the restaurant, convinced she held the upper hand. Now she stood exposed, vulnerable, and completely out of control. Mr. Thompson turned back to Marcus, his face filled with concern. "Mr. Reed, I sincerely apologize for the way you've been treated tonight. This is not the level of service Le Chateau prides itself on." Marcus, still composed, simply picked up his glass of water, taking a slow sip before setting it down. He looked at Olivia, his expression unreadable. "I appreciate the apology, Thompson," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But the problem isn't just about how I was treated." Olivia's throat tightened. She knew what was coming. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. "The real issue," he continued, "is that this isn't about me at all. It's about the way you see people. If I weren't Marcus Reed, if I were just a regular man walking in off the street, would I have been treated any differently?" Silence. Olivia's lips parted, but no words came out. The truth in his statement burned deeper than any scolding ever could. Lisa, the young entrepreneur who had been watching the night unfold, nodded in agreement. "He's right," she whispered to her friend. "Respect shouldn't be reserved only for the wealthy." Marcus exhaled softly and leaned back in his chair. "I don't expect everyone to recognize me, but I do expect that anyone who walks into this restaurant, whether they're in a suit or sneakers, gets treated with dignity." Mr. Thompson nodded, his face set with determination. Absolutely, sir. This is unacceptable, and I assure you it will be addressed. Marcus studied Olivia for a long moment before finally speaking again. What do you think, Olivia? She felt her heart slam against her ribs. Her arrogance, her sharp words, the way she had purposely tried to humiliate him, it all played back in her mind like a cruel movie. She swallowed hard, her hands trembling. I was wrong. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the confession felt heavier than anything she had ever admitted in her life. I misjudged you, and I treated you unfairly. She hesitated, eyes glistening with shame. I let my pride get in the way of doing my job the right way. Marcus nodded, his gaze steady. Do you want to fix that? She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time that night, she saw not just a powerful man, but a person who had given her a choice. Yes, she whispered. I do. The weight of Olivia's admission hung in the air. Her once smug demeanor had vanished, replaced by raw vulnerability. She had never felt this exposed in her entire career. But as she looked at Marcus, his expression calm, firm, but not unkind, she realized that this was not just about humiliation, it was an opportunity. Mr. Thompson crossed his arms, glancing at Marcus. Sir, if you'd like, I can handle this matter personally. But Marcus shook his head. That won't be necessary. This isn't about punishment. He turned his attention back to Olivia. What's important is whether she learns from this. Olivia's hands clenched at her sides. A lump formed in her throat, but she forced herself to stand tall. She had spent the entire night trying to make Marcus uncomfortable. Now, she was the one who felt out of place. But this wasn't about saving face anymore. I want to learn, she said, her voice steady despite the nervousness in her chest. I know I let my pride, my judgments, and my assumptions get the best of me. That's not the kind of person I want to be. Lisa, who had been watching the entire ordeal from her table, gave a small nod of approval. At least she's owning up to it, she murmured to her friend. Marcus studied Olivia carefully, then offered a small nod. Good, because change doesn't come from words. It comes from action. He gestured around the restaurant. You work at one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city, but prestige means nothing if the people inside don't reflect the values of hospitality. Mr. Calloway, the distinguished older gentleman seated at the central table, nodded in agreement. A restaurant is more than just its decor and expensive menu. It's about how people feel when they walk in. Tonight, you failed at that, young lady. Olivia swallowed hard, but didn't shrink away. Instead, she straightened her posture. You're right, she admitted. I was so focused on who I thought belonged here that I forgot what this job is really about. Marcus allowed a small smile to appear on his lips. Then prove it. Not just to me, but to every customer who walks through that door from now on. A hush fell over the room. Olivia took a deep breath and nodded. I will. The tension that had filled the restaurant all evening slowly began to ease. A few guests exchanged glances, some nodding in approval, others merely relieved that the ordeal had come to a meaningful resolution. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. We'll be reviewing our customer service policies, and I'll personally ensure that this never happens again. Marcus leaned back in his chair, satisfied. That's all I ask. As the restaurant slowly returned to its usual rhythm, Olivia felt a new kind of pressure. Not one of embarrassment, but of responsibility. This was her chance to be better. And for the first time that night, she was grateful. As the evening wound down, Marcus finished his meal, the tension in the restaurant having faded into a quiet, reflective atmosphere. Olivia moved carefully through the dining hall, no longer carrying herself with arrogance but with a newfound humility. She had made a mistake, one that had been painfully public, but she had also been given a second chance. Marcus stood from his table, adjusting his jacket as he prepared to leave. Before heading to the exit, he turned back to Mr. Thompson and the staff. This place has the potential to be more than just an exclusive restaurant. It can be a place where people feel valued, no matter who they are. With those words, he exited Le Chateau, stepping into the cool night air. As he walked down the quiet streets of New York, he reflected on the night's events. This wasn't just about a bad waitress or poor service. It was about something bigger. Respect isn't something reserved for the wealthy. It should be the foundation of every interaction. And as Olivia stood inside the restaurant, watching him leave, she knew that tonight had changed her, not just as a server, but as a person. In today's world, people are often judged by appearances, status, or wealth. Social media glorifies luxury, and society tends to treat people differently based on what they wear, drive, or own. But as Marcus demonstrated, true value isn't in material things, it's in character. This story serves as a reminder that kindness and respect should never be conditional. Whether in a restaurant, at work, or in everyday life, the way we treat others defines who we are. A small act of respect can change someone's day, or even their entire perspective. We should all strive to see beyond first impressions. Instead of making assumptions, we should ask ourselves, would I treat this person the same way if I knew nothing about their status? Because in the end, wealth fades, appearances change, but the way we make others feel will always be remembered.